I'm going to let well, yeah, it looks pretty stable.
Okay.
Okay, Brooke, thank you for being on the Lyme Lads podcast.
Thank you for having me.
The idea behind the podcast is to have people with Lyme disease talk with each other and let people listen. So I don't really know where to get started here. I know you're in tick country out in Wisconsin. How long have you been out there?
I've lived in Wisconsin my entire life. A brief 2-year hiatus in Arizona, but the majority of it has been all in country residences in Wisconsin.
Okay. And before we started recording, you said that you've had Lyme disease since 2010 and you've had it four times.
Yes. The first time in 2010, I did not have the bullseye rash that went along with it, and I had a very long line of neurological symptoms that started happening to me that were like, what is going on? Something is not okay. Um, Fortunately, 2 times after that, I did get the bullseye. They still ran the tests. But then the most recent in 2024, I had the bullseye again. This time they finally didn't run tests. They just put me on antibiotics. I'm still not sure if it's all just one that has hung out the whole time. Um, I mean, the rash obviously shows that there was, new infection. However, with the question, is it chronic? Does it ever go away? Does it ever clear up? So are these like flare-ups, or is it truly new infections every single time, that was flared up with, I don't know. There's a lot of questions.
So in 2010, you say that you didn't have the bullseye rash. How did you come to the conclusion, or how did you hypothesize that you were dealing with Lyme?
That we actually, my physician, who has actually been my physician since I was 12 years old, I'm 44 now, so she's been with me forever. Um, I was able to tell her, something's wrong, something's not okay. And we went through a battery of tests and blood tests. And apparently, someone had just suggested her to just run a Lyme test. And they had thought that finding that was just incidental afterwards. They didn't think that it fit my symptoms. However, after treatment with the antibiotics, well, it first flared up during the treatment of antibiotics, but then afterwards, I did have relief and the symptoms pretty much went away. But then I had days that I would say I felt limey that day. And it would just be like it just all hit all over again, and it had never gone away. I'd get extremely unusual symptoms, like I was being burnt with a curling iron, something I called ice ants. It was like ice that would just run upside down up my arms, tingling, muscle ticks and tremors. My voice box became extremely inflamed, and it sounded like I had laryngitis for an extended period of time. Just something was wrong. Something was very obviously wrong, and we could not find out. And then they still didn't believe it was Lyme's after we even determined that. I mean, they even gave me spinal taps. Like we were on a mission, but we had no clue what it was.
So you got the spinal tap. Did it come back positive?
It came back positive for IgG bands, which actually supported a diagnosis of MS. However, when I had MRIs to examine my spine and my brain, there were not lesions that weren't explained by my chronic migraines. Actually, there were some lesions, but they said that that was most likely due to the migraine symptoms that I had. Um, I'm sorry, I just kind of lost my train of thought there. And brain fog. Brain fog also goes
Yeah.
along with it a lot.
Well, so we were discussing in 2010, you were having a lot of symptoms, and then you like incidentally they tested you for Lyme, and I guess was that the spinal tap or was that just a blood test in 2010?
That was a blood test that they had, unbeknownst to me, they had sent it in for a Western blot. And then when the Western blot came back positive, they called me in antibiotics. And I just got a message on my phone, or maybe it was an email because it wasn't really the apps back then. I got a message on my phone that I had a prescription ready, lived close, so I went and picked it up, and it was the antibiotics. And they hadn't even called and told me yet. I actually then called my doctor's office and was like, "Why am I being prescribed, doxycycline?" And they're like, "Oh, well, because your Lyme test came back positive." And then research, 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 and it's like, "Oh my gosh, this
And
makes sense."
and these are symptoms that, like the ice ants and the brain fog and stuff like that, you had been having those symptoms prior to 2010, probably.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Since about 2009, the symptoms came up in winter. Um, and they had tried to say that I must have gotten it, according to their timeline, that I must have gotten a tick bite from a tick that came in on a Christmas tree, because what else are you gonna have happen in the middle of winter in tick country? But the only logical conclusion is that I had had it for much longer than just the winter, and that was, just the neurological symptoms just taking their time to really kick in.
Okay. I imagine that you probably, and this is just hypothesis. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Uh, I mean, that statement's kind of silly because I feel like most doctors have not a clue. But I would assume that you were probably bitten in like 2005 or earlier.
Yeah.
Like if you've been in Wisconsin, the majority of your life and in like a rural area or out in the country, who knows really when you came in contact with it. But the thing about Lyme disease is you don't always get that bullseye rash. You don't always know you've been bitten, and then you start having all of these symptoms that take sometimes several years to develop. So, like I was bitten when I was 8 years old. I had the bullseye rash. My dad pulled the tick off of my back. Um, give me 1 second. Let me
No
have
problem.
my roommate just turn down the TV. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
No problem.
He's got issues on his side too.
I like him. This is a very nice interview.
Easy to.
He's knowledgeable.
I'm back. So I was bitten when I was 8, and I was fortunate enough to have the bullseye rash. It was actually kind of like this is what happened. I was on summer break at my dad's house. My dad was a physician. He was a hand surgeon. And my sister and we would visit him for 2 months out of the summer, and we were basically unsupervised the whole time. He didn't take off work. He just was working, and we supervised ourselves, and we were playing out in the woods all
Hmm.
day, which
Sounds
which
like
is
my
what
childhood.
kids should do. There was a
I just
creek.
meant outside.
There was a creek behind the house, so we played out in the woods, played in the creek for 12 hours a day. And as an 8-year old, I wasn't super hygienic. I remember my dad saying, like looking at my feet, or like looking at me and being like you need to go take a shower. So I wasn't bathing regularly, especially without a lot of supervision. And I remember I got out of the shower, and I was looking in the mirror, and right in between my shoulder blades was this big bullseye rash. Like that's the only reason I was able to see it, was like, whoa, what's that? And I couldn't reach it. I didn't know, like what was going on there. So I went down into the basement in my dad's office, and he pulled the tick off my back, put it in the ashtray, put it out, like killed it with a lit cigarette. We could have walked to the I could have walked myself to the hospital, but it just wasn't I don't think it was in my dad's wheelhouse. He didn't think about it. Maybe it was neglect. It was, who knows? But uh, I remember having a really bad headache around that same time. And it's interesting what you remember. Like, I remember my dad had cooked spaghetti, and spaghetti was just one of my favorite meals. I couldn't eat the spaghetti. I went upstairs to my bedroom and I laid down and I just had a pounding headache. I'll never forget it. I remember eating the spaghetti the next day and thinking, oh, it's even better the next day, or, I'm still getting to enjoy it. But I remember that sort of chain of events. And then I didn't like in the back of my head, I'll never forget the bullseye. I'll never forget the tick. But I didn't start really exhibiting symptoms until about 5 years later when I was 13. At least what I can discern. I think a little kid, they don't really know much about anything, but let alone if they're dealing with some kind of infectious disease.
Yeah, you're figuring yourself out, not necessarily all the symptoms that come along with other things too.
It's very possible then that you came in contact with Lyme disease or the bacterium that causes Lyme maybe in 2005 or even earlier, and it just took a while for the symptoms to start kicking in.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So you pick up a script of doxycycline from the pharmacy, and how did you feel on the doxycycline?
I actually felt worse on the doxycycline. And I don't recall if it was my physician that had told me or if it was something I just Googled, but I had heard that it was going to get worse before it got better because once the Lyme's disease bacterium started to die, they would release a certain type of toxin, which then makes your body react, even more as you're fighting it off. So it actually did get worse, before it got better. And then ever since, it's kind of just been like a yo-yo back and forth. Like, is it
Oh,
back? Is it just a flare up? What's going on?
let's hold that thought. Is it just a flare up? Did it ever go away? And that sort of is in the realm of, is this chronic Lyme? Has it been treated effectively? Do I have an active infection, or is this the aftermath of an infection? So we're just going to hold that for a second. A lot of people, they talk about having these like herxing episodes where they take antibiotics or they take a parasite cleanse, and then their symptoms get worse. And I never experienced that.
Good.
So I wonder, do you remember how long you were on doxycycline?
It was only a 2-week course, which really surprised me. It's only been a 2-week course every time. And I just don't understand that. The first time I was on private insurance, the last three, we were just on, Badger Care insurance. And yet it's been the same 2-week script of doxycycline either way. My mother-in-law, she actually came down with Lyme's, and she was put on an IV antibiotic, and she had to go in and like receive, IV antibiotics for I think it was like a month actually. And hers cleared up really good. So one question there is why do different insurances treat it differently? Why is there a different, attack plan depending on what your coverage is? That doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good question that is probably out of my realm. I don't think anybody can really answer how insurance companies work with the healthcare system in regards to which treatments are funded, which treatments are denied. Uh, which procedures are vital and then which ones are cosmetic or you don't need them. Probably only somebody in the industry can answer that. I'm of the opinion that we are in a big mess with our healthcare system.
Oh yeah.
It's totally corrupt, totally inefficient. It doesn't serve the people. There are so many entities getting, not even getting rich, have been, got rich, want to stay rich, want to keep that money coming in. And we can talk about that. I've actually, I talked to somebody who had cancer the other day, and, you know, chemotherapy, that treatment is always yes. Well, you got the funding, no problem. How much is the bill? Oh, it was 1 year of treatment, $1.7 million.
Yeah.
Um, but then it comes down to like a antibiotic IV treatment that might cost a few thousand. No, sorry, your Lyme disease doesn't exist. So it's
Speaking of it not existing, I don't mean to get conspiracy theory at all, but I have in some of my reading and research come across that, that it could have been a bioengineered, military thing. And for them to actually treat people adequately, they would have to kind of admit that it's a problem and it was something that was engineered. And to admit that, or to get the proper treatment, they would have to admit how it was designed and what the vector was actually used for.
let's table this for just a moment. Bioweapon, because that's a great question that I haven't researched really at all, but I don't mind talking about it from a perspective of sort of like, this is what I heard. So back to herxing for a moment. First off, the CDC, one of their main claims, which growing up as a kid, I never understood why my testing came back negative every time. I was like, maybe they missed it. Maybe I just need to be tested again. No, the test is baloney.
Yeah.
It's totally faulty. And if you've seen the Quiet Epidemic documentary, have you heard of that?
hmm
Oh, have you seen it?
I've watched a couple. I'm not exactly quite sure which one of the ones that I'm remembering that one exactly is. So,
It's the one with Dr. Richard Horowitz. He talks about how the testing criteria was altered with anticipation for a vaccine for Lyme disease. They essentially took out two very prominent protein detectors that if these two proteins were detected, then there was a high likelihood that you had the bacterial infection. But they didn't want people getting a false positive if they had been vaccinated. So they removed those high indicating proteins from the test. They had the vaccine. The vaccine was on the market for just a couple of years in the early 1990s. And then I guess people were having symptoms, like they would take the vaccine and develop arthritis, or they would, I, I think what I heard is they pulled it from the market because it wasn't profitable or something. But
gee,
they
makes sense.
they kept the testing criteria the same for the last 30 years, and there's been no vaccine on the market.
Oh, Pfizer's developing one right now. The only thing with it, that one's not an mRNA vaccine, fortunately. It's called a multivalent protein subunit vaccine, which don't ask me what that means, but all
It
right, Pfizer, let's go. I'm not taking it.
it's yeah, no way. It's totally corrupt, and we can talk about that in a bit. So back to the CDC. their big claim for Lyme disease was it's easy to diagnose and it's easy to treat,
Hmm.
which
Nope.
is the complete opposite. It probably would be easy to diagnose if the test was not altered for a vaccine that didn't exist. But that being said, once you've had Lyme or the spirochete bacteria in your body for a number of years, I, I'm under the impression that it sort of weasels its way into the crevices of your body that whether it's in biofilm or and I'm not really sure what biofilm is, but I've heard that a lot. Uh, it's not easily treated by antibiotics, certainly not a 2 or 4 week regimen of doxycycline.
Yeah.
So I was, after 20 years, finally got antibiotics. I was on doxycycline, azithromycin, and ceftonir simultaneously for 10 months straight.
Oh, wow.
I was on triple antibiotics for 10 months. And back to the herxing, one thing that saved my life before I could get antibiotics was juicing celery.
Hmm.
Have you ever tried that?
Not with celery, no. I have tried juicing and I'm very into alternative medicine and alternative therapies nowadays, because of what I've been through, but I've not juiced celery. Like I might be later today. Tell me more.
Uh, so there's a guy called the medical medium. He's Anthony William, and he wrote a book called, I think it's just Celery Juice, the Medicine Healing Millions Worldwide, or something like that. And I remember before I got my diagnosis, just being so sick, in and out of the hospital every other month. I was in the hospital 5 times in 8 months. Couldn't figure out what the deal was, and then and ran out of money. Didn't have family support, and then one of my coworkers said he actually handed me the book. He was like, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And I looked at it and I was like, celery juice? That's silly. Now that's not going to do anything. Lucky for me, I had no money. I had no other options. So I gave celery juice a shot. And in a nutshell, you juice the celery, you drink it on an empty stomach. You don't mix in anything else, no fruits, no other vegetables, just celery juice. Best to be organic. You also want a masticating juicer, one that crushes it instead of like shredding it, essentially. The first time I tried the celery juice, it was like night and day with my brain fog. It was like in 5 minutes after drinking the celery juice, signals were lighting up in my head. I was able to like articulate my thoughts, and it was incredible. So
I'm going to be trying celery juice. I am aware that Native Americans have used celery to treat pain and for other additional healing things, but I've never heard of juicing celery. But hey, what can it hurt? I'm gonna try that.
definitely try it. Let me know how you feel. It's you might have it might clear your bowels, but you do it routinely for a few days, and you'll be regular, and uh, it's the bee's knees. There's a special salt in the celery, and after I tried it, I was like mind blown. I uh, I was juicing 2 bundles of celery in the morning and then 2 at night. So, and you'd think, wow. And I'd go to the grocery store, I'd have my whole cart full of celery, and I'd clear out the whole aisle. And you'd think, well, that's ridiculous, but uh, 4 bundles of celery is probably like $10 to $12, and that's organic too. So for $10 a day, I was able to alleviate a lot of my symptoms. And one of the things that the celery juice helps with is detoxifying your body. It helps clear out a sluggish liver, and your liver is essential to detoxifying.
Hmm.
So I think that's why I was able to avoid the herxing. And in fact, uh, and this is usually my argument when people say, "Well, you tested negative for Lyme, you really didn't have it." Why then did I feel better on triple antibiotics?
Because it was treating something.
It
Right.
was treating something. I, you tell me I don't have Lyme disease. How about you take triple antibiotics every day and see your productivity go up?
Yeah, and
Because
then tell me it was nothing. Yep.
because my productivity went through the roof. I felt great. I had no herxing. I was juicing regularly. I felt I felt like I got my life back again. So for somebody to tell me I wasn't dealing with anything,
Right. Or it was all in your head. It's all psychosomatic. Yep.
just
First of all,
ridiculous.
now I never tried juicing celery, but after my initial round of antibiotics, in my desperation, I was ordering pet meds from China. Seriously, like fish aquarium and dog doxycycline from China and taking it. Because, 2 weeks of doxycycline, like really? So yeah, I trusted mail order pet meds from China to help clear things up.
It, and I'm glad you're okay. It's so I'm glad you're okay after taking pet
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
meds.
I realize it wasn't the best thing. I'm just being honest because, desperate times called for desperate measures in my mind.
It is, and this is something that people need to know. The whole claim that it's easily diagnosable and easily treatable, if somebody is willing to go out of their way to get drugs that weren't even meant necessarily or marketed for human consumption, that's a pretty good indication that this is not something that's easily treatable.
Hmm.
But people need to understand why it's not easily treatable. It and there are a couple reasons. The first one is it actually being a stealthy pathogen that weasels its way into your body, and
Yeah.
and
They're like shaped like little corks. They look like, or little spirals. They like just go right into your tissues and just hide. They found them in the autopsies of brains of many, many Alzheimer's patients, like to
yep.
the point where it is like a solid hypothesis that Alzheimer's is caused by the Lyme bacterium.
So you have this very clever bacteria that is hard to treat in itself if you let it persist and if you've had the infection for a while. But then, in my opinion, the main reason why it's hard to treat is because of the poor diagnostic testing, because of the altered diagnostic test, because and this kind of brings us to what is Lyme disease, and people are like, oh, you have Lyme disease, you got that from a tick. It's like, no, 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 no. I got the infection from a tick. I got the disease after 20 years of poor diagnostic testing. That's the difference. So it's not necessarily hard to treat if you know you were bitten and you get antibiotics promptly. But if you wait 20 years and you're sick as a dog, you're bedridden, your relationships are falling apart. You don't know what's going on. You can't think clearly. You're losing your job. At that point, it's not easy to treat. It's it's a whole nother ball
Established.
game.
It moved in.
It's moved in, and it uh, I mean, we can get into the type of treatment. Uh, so you've been on doxycycline how many times?
4.
Four
Well, and then
times.
4 times prescribed by a physician, and then there was the pet meds, personal, my personal best.
And and so each of those treatments were 2-week
Yeah.
regimens. Oh man. Okay, so and are you under the impression that you're clear of the Lyme bacterium?
No, I'm not under that impression in any way. I mean, I tell people that I've had it because otherwise here comes a long, possibly politically charged conversation about, is it actually chronic or is it in your head? So to avoid conversations like that, I will say that I've had Lyme's disease, and I never speak about it in the current just because people don't get it.
People don't get it. But I get it, Brooke. I get it. So the idea that there's so much misinformation out there that you can't even be honest with people because they just don't have a clue. And if you open that can of worms, it's like, oh, I don't have all day to talk with you about this.
Yeah, I
Um,
can't educate you on it just so that we can have a conversation. Yeah, it's
and
you,
and
you don't
then
understand unless you've been through it.
and then everything they read online, most everything it's total crap. It's actually the opposite. They might as well rename Lyme disease if the CDC really wanted to rename Lyme disease, they should rename it the easily detectable, easily treatable disease.
That they ignore.
That the CDC absolutely does not ignore. That they want you healthy, and it's just total crap.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk said it about the nonprofits or the NGOs, the non-government organizations. If it's named something like the the well-being for children eating good food, that money is not going anywhere near children. It probably has nothing to do with food, and they definitely don't care about the well-being of anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the complete opposite. So anyway, let's move forward here. So I don't want to be like the bearer of bad news, uh, but I still think that I'm overcoming an infection, and I would imagine that you are as well.
Oh yeah. When I have a lousy day, and I don't know why I'm feeling, like crap, it's in the back of my mind all the time. It's because Lyme disease. It's because it never cleared up. But how do you explain that to people that then just tell you that you got treated for that? You know, it, you're fine. Like, okay, fine. I'm fine. Not talking to you about it then.
I had a friend, one of my buddies, and this was when I was like in the phase of talking with people about it before I became a little bit more knowledgeable, before I had treatment. I was still in the phase of I'm really sick. I don't know what's going on. I've been tested for Lyme several times, all negative. And then this is the conversation I'm having with friends. And one of my friends said, uh, "Well, you've tested negative. You don't have it. It's in your head. Like you're being a hypochondriac." So have you ever had? I mean, it sounds like you've had a similar experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, that has made me be confident in myself, and I'm able to look to my own intuition and my own understanding. And it did create kind of like a circumstance with me where I don't need to have somebody else validate something for me now because I've been through the gauntlet. I've been through the ringer where there has been something absolutely wrong. People are absolutely denying it, telling me I'm crazy, and then I've been right on the money. So I've learned to trust myself a lot from it. But yeah, the isolation from the diagnosis or the lack of diagnosis is definitely one of the biggest issues. It's so isolating.
I think where people really need to wake up is they have so much trust in the medical system that it's perfect. That without a shadow of a doubt, if you were tested for something and it came back negative, you don't have it.
Right.
Or if it comes back positive, you absolutely have it. And there are plenty of examples of false positives as well, and like cancer treatment and stuff like that. But if you believe that the medical system is perfect, despite hearing every day how inefficient it is, how expensive it is, how ridiculous it is to go through that process. If despite hearing all that, you still think the medical system is perfect and the diagnostic testing is perfect,
Yeah,
you
they're just following, the bullet list that they're supposed to follow. The insurance tells them you test and if then and next phase if then it's not tailored to people. I'm very fortunate that I had a physician, that when I tell her like, no, I think this was it. I think we did find the answer, although incidentally, this is what we need to look into. And I don't know, just 2 weeks of antibiotics. I don't understand that. I
it's
really
not
don't.
enough.
They did just release a study. I think it was last week. Hold on, I took a note on it. It was in the Science Translation Medicine. They just were researching that piperacillin, it's an old antibiotic. Well, in mice treatments, they actually discovered that at 100 times less of a dose than doxycycline, it was able to clear it up in mice and without affecting the gut microbiome. Now, this study was only released like a week ago. I'm assuming it was studied or released soon, maybe because they want to pump out the vaccine. I don't know. There just seems to be a lot of extra spotlight on Lyme's right now. But I think that's a good potential for treatment, in the future for people to at least try that. I know I've never been on piperacillin before. I don't think it was one of the three that you had just mentioned.
Nope.
So I don't know. I'm considering asking my doctor to try me on that again, or to try me on it to see if it can get rid of some of the chronic lingering. Although I am aware I'm going to have to start the whole conversation again. Did you get an acute infection? No. Is this chronic? Okay, well, that's not really a thing. So I don't know. I'm going to have to fight for myself again.
uh, Brooke, what I would say is you need to speak with, and this is another red flag, a Lyme literate doctor.
Yep.
As soon as they're like creating a nickname for a physician that's willing to listen to you for specifically for Lyme, there's an issue.
Yeah.
I don't like imagine if they said like a cancer literate doctor, or like a bone literate doctor. Like if you break your arm and you go in there and they're like, it doesn't look broken. It's like, oh no, I need to go to a doctor that actually believes my arm is broken.
Yeah.
Because they're if you go to a Lyme literate doctor, they're going to treat you much more aggressively than if you go to somebody that doesn't specialize in Lyme.
I did research that avenue back in 2010 after we found out that it was Lyme. And unfortunately, lots of Lyme literate doctors are actually they're penalized and given consequences for treating patients with Lyme if they treat, off label or just other methods of doing it. And I don't know, just yeah, if you have a special doctor, just to be able to listen to those facts, there's something there.
It reminds me my family comes from the medical industry, and I'd like to touch on this for just for a second, and then maybe ask one of these questions that Rock came up with, just kind of like interject it there. But I have two sisters that are doctors. My dad was a doctor. I've got a sister that's a pharmacist. Uh, it's like everybody's in the medical field. Nobody wants to help me. Nobody has the time of day. But I finally found somebody that would treat me here in Oklahoma, and I'm arguing with my sister. It's like, just come to a doctor's appointment with me. No, don't have time. No, you don't have Lyme disease. Oh, well, I found a doctor that's going to treat me. This is the treatment. Oh, no, you can't do long-term antibiotics. That's really harmful to you. My sister threatened to report the treating physician.
Yep, that tracks.
And in my head, I'm like, okay, so you don't have any interest in helping. You're of the opinion that the treating physician that's helping me is completely wrong and should lose their license. What it comes down to is you don't think I have Lyme disease. That's what it comes down to. You
Yeah.
think the diagnostic testing is accurate, which, like, if that's the debate you want to have, if you want to believe the diagnostic testing over your brother and the symptoms that I'm having and all of the pain and suffering I've experienced, you want to side with big pharma over me. I'm sorry, I don't have any time of day. Like, I don't have any space in my life for you. You're out.
Yeah, Lyme's is not something you throw around because you want attention. Like it's life destroying. It truly is.
It's life destroying. It's relationship destroying. And if when I was a kid and when I was younger, it was I was more likely to believe the people around me in my family that were telling me, like, marijuana is your problem. You definitely don't have Lyme disease. You're a drug addict. This is what drug addicts look like. And it's like, no, you guys are all wrong. The more I listened to them, the sicker I got.
Yeah.
That's the problem is, and I kept journals of it. I'd
Yeah,
try
same here.
I would try not using marijuana, and I'd get to like 2 months, and I would be, there's like an initial uprise, like, oh, I'm not high every day. Like, sure, maybe I'm like higher functioning for, a week or two, maybe 3 weeks, maybe even a month. But once I got into like the 2 month mark, I started going downhill quickly. It, it was
Okay.
like it was like, whoa, something's wrong here. Why do I feel so sick now that I've stopped using marijuana?
All right. But
I,
didn't fix it.
I'm of the opinion that the marijuana was helping me with a chronic illness. Anyway, let's rewind
I
here.
can agree to that because I'm an alcoholic, so I'll use marijuana, as a way to relax instead of alcohol. So, I'm a supporter as well.
Yeah, it's definitely easier on your body than alcohol. Uh, for me, and I'm out in I'm out in Oklahoma. People like to drink beer out here. I I got a buddy that, like, I can't help but drink beer when we hang out. He's one of those guys that if we're hanging out, we're gonna have some beer. but it's to the point where I'm drinking I'm drinking Budweiser Select 55, where it's like half the alcohol of the Bud Light. So my water content is as high as possible when I'm drinking. And even then, sometimes I'll wake up with a hangover, and I've had like 6 or 7 very light beers, something that would amount to like 3 or 4 Bud Lights, and I'm hungover the next day.
Just wrecked.
I,
Yeah, I did originally, because I've been sober for 8 years, but I did originally use alcohol as a crutch and as a coping mechanism, to self-medicate and to try to, cheer myself up, things like that. But in my research, they did say that alcohol does affect, the Lyme's disease, and it can make you feel, as I would say, limey. I'd feel limey after a night of drinking, and well, eventually I got hooked on it and then had to quit drinking because it was killing me. But I don't think that any of that would have happened if it wasn't for coming down with the limes and being questioned and second guessed and being told that it's all in my head. I had to cope. I didn't choose the proper ways to do that at first, but I've learned.
when you're isolated and you know something's wrong, but nobody will listen, nobody will help, or and when I say nobody, I mean like physicians, insurance companies, the CDC, and you feel like you're you're just withering away. Sometimes it's nice to just have a couple drinks and stop thinking about how bad the situation is.
Oh, that just triggered a memory. When I turned 30, I actually had thrown myself a 30th darn near dead birthday party because at the time we were, the number one thing was, oh, it's probably MS. The spinal tap confirmed it. We're probably looking at this. Um, and so yeah, my 30th birthday party was, I'm halfway dead. It was retirement party, halfway dead retirement party. And I was like, it's nothing but, water with lemon and goodness from here on out. Gonna try to make the best of what I got left. I've made it 14 years since then, so.
Wow. It's good. I mean, and the last 8 years you've been sober.
Mhm.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get into a question here. Ba, 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 ba. How has the debate around chronic Lyme versus post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome affected your own care or perspective?
Well, I think both are almost looked at as not kind of something that doesn't really exist. People will say that chronic Lyme's doesn't exist, but then other people will say that, the post fatigue or the post syndrome symptoms that you're getting after that, those don't exist either. And to even have that conversation with somebody, you'd have to go back into actually educating them because unless you have suffered through something like this, you're not going to know what post Lyme's disease symptoms are or even chronic Lyme's. So it's been hard to talk about because people don't see that side of the coin.
I
Can you
I
turn your
think
phone
that
off?
the
Mom, just a second. Sorry. Mom.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I
Sorry.
think that you're fine. The big issue in this question is that I remember Googling chronic Lyme, and this was before Elon bought X or Twitter, and this was in a like probably 2020 like COVID era where there's a lot of censorship online, vaccine hesitancy. You could be thrown off a platform immediately if you're spreading any vaccine hesitancy. uh, theories or just information. But I remember Googling chronic Lyme, and one of the first results was like chronic Lyme does not exist. Like
Hmm.
like Wikipedia, chronic Lyme is something that lunatics use to describe. Like it was. I wish I had taken screenshots. I might have taken screenshots of it. It was that repulsive. It so there was a lot, and I remember saying to my sister, I was like, if you read now, so this was it. I saw in Reddit. So you would look on this Reddit link, and there was an anonymous user that was very well informed about Lyme disease, but was just reciting everything that the CDC would say, like
Yeah.
easily treatable, easily diagnosable, chronic Lyme doesn't exist. And it was an anonymous user on Reddit that was, it's like, what's your point of being here? Like, why are you in this forum right now? Essentially telling people that they're not sick, that they're crazy. Like, where do you get off? Like, one, you're an anonymous user, so I'm going to just discredit everything you say because you're not even willing to put your name on here.
Right.
Like, why would I believe you if you're not willing to stand by it with your name? But then how specific it was, and how it was like a parrot of the CDC. It was like, what they said, we're going to put that there. Let me show you these articles. Very well informed. Like you think Lyme disease exists? Let me show you 3 articles why it doesn't exist. So there's this debate where it's like, is your infection persistent? Like, despite antibiotic treatment, do you still have an active infection? And I'm of the impression that both of us do.
I
We
am as
we
well.
we probably still have spirocyte bacterium in our bodies. You might have knocked it back with your 4 doxycycline treatments, and maybe you felt better or worse for a brief moment with the herxing, better afterwards. But if you don't get every single bacterium, you're going to have an issue in a few months, a few years. You're going to be chronically ill your whole life.
Yep.
So then they put in here chronic Lyme versus post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome.
Yeah. That's
So,
okay.
in a nutshell, they're saying you were treated with a highly effective, absolutely successful treatment, and you're still exhibiting symptoms. So we're going to call it post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. You don't have Lyme disease. We
Covered.
we treated it. You're good, but now you have this syndrome in which you think you have Lyme disease. It it's it's complete nonsense. It really
Hmm.
is. And my argument for this was uh, the CDC, per their criteria, 5 times over 18 years, 6 times, said that I do not have an infection. I'm as healthy as a horse. Nothing wrong with me.
No.
And then I had my blood work sent to IGenics in California. It cost me $1,500 out of pocket, and they said in black and white, yes, you do have the spirocyte bacteria, and you've got like 5 other co-infections. I was really sick. But why would I listen to the CDC about Lyme disease if if they were never able to diagnose it? It's like,
Right.
why would I listen to your treatment protocol for, I think, 2 to 4 weeks of doxycycline if you didn't even diagnose me?
Yeah. That's the question.
Doesn't sound like a good idea. Like, hey, you don't have Lyme disease, but make sure you follow this extremely short regimen of antibiotics. Like, let's follow this protocol.
Yep. Now you're perfect.
Yeah, now you're ready to go back to work. How has Lyme changed your day-to-day life physically, emotionally, socially, or professionally?
It has affected all of them in very significant ways. Um, I think just how I communicate with people, I mean, whether it be, a new employer or, a family member or a friend, like if they're not knowledgeable on the subject or if they're hesitant to even entertain the idea of chronic Lyme's, um, there's just not much to talk about. Like people say, "Oh, how are you doing today?" Fine. That's all you're gonna get, because how are you gonna respond to me when I tell you how I actually feel? You're not gonna respond in a way that's supportive or that even believes me. So I'm just not gonna say it. It's so it's made me hesitant to share things, but also it's made me very confident that I don't need external validation from people to be able to know that what I'm feeling or experiencing is true. And that is probably the number one thing that it has taught me is that, I can I can count on my own interpretation without having to rely on others around me to agree with it.
It's unfortunate that we have to be tortured and our lives uprooted for us to, like, we have to draw that line in the sand for our survival. And when you draw that line in the sand and you say, I can't listen to you because you're just wrong, it, you're right, Brooke. Like, you're right. I know I'm right. Anybody that says that I'm wrong, like my sister and family members that just haven't showed up, it's more destructive for them to be in my life than for them to be out. I
No, I can
it, it,
understand that.
it's honestly, it's a threat to my life for me to believe that you know I don't have Lyme disease is a great path for me to get on antidepressants, uh, methamphetamine like Adderall. Uh, it's like it when you have Lyme disease, and when the physicians around you or the family members deny that, then they start going into the, oh, let's get you some pills, let's get you on some mood stabilizers, let's get you on XYZ, and you just end up getting way, way worse,
Mhm.
like much worse.
And they're not accepting your feedback. They're not, they don't care what your input is, and then how are you supposed to open up to anybody that literally does not care about your input? It's like, what else are you dismissing? How else am I going to be invalidated by you today? So, okay.
It's I've learned, and I'm still learning this lesson, but I think it's been like in the last month. I'm just done with it. Like if you at this point do not believe I have Lyme disease, we're done. Because my belief that I have Lyme disease saved my life.
Yeah.
Like, that saved my life, because then I got antibiotics. Then I was juicing celery. I I did things that I jumped through hoops to get better. Whereas they're just like, yeah, take some pills. You look depressed, or you can't focus. It's like, nah, man, I'm not taking your pharmaceutical junk. I'm not going to be another just statistic. Uh, how has Lyme changed your day to day life, physically, emotionally, socially? Uh, I would say spot on, just like you said. It affects me in every one of those categories. Physically, I feel like an old man. I'm 31, but my joints are achy. My balance is, I walk like, I walk like my body operates like nothing is coordinating together. It's like
Yeah.
my legs are totally independent. Like they don't know, the other one exists. And my arms are the same way. So I'm like a jellyfish. But not as graceful at all. Uh, and then emotionally, one of the neurological symptoms that I get is it's very easy for me to get upset. So anger as an emotion and frustration. I don't know if that's an emotion, but man, I get frustrated pretty easily, and that's like a quick step away from getting angry.
Yeah.
Uh, and
No,
and
it's hard to be able to, sorry.
no, you go
It's
ahead.
hard
You go
to
ahead.
be able to just hold somebody's hand through things when you know in the back of your head they're not taking you seriously, no matter what you say. And it's made me emotionally withdrawn, I suppose, a lot from people around me. Because it's like, well, if I did tell you, you would invalidate me and laugh at me. So just not gonna go there.
No, it's not even worth it. Hopefully, we together can build a community of people that are there for us. Whether it's listeners that want to believe what we're saying, or whether it's people that have experienced Lyme disease that say, "Yeah, that's my story too." Hopefully, we can create a community where we've got a support system for you and for myself and for anybody suffering.
Yeah, just when we're told, oh, it's gone, we need to keep repeating, no, it's not. No, it's not gone. It's not just an after syndrome. This is never stopped, and unless we do something, it's never gonna stop.
Yeah, and I, talking about it the way we're doing, I hope is a step in the right direction towards doing something.
Yeah.
And when I started the podcast, to be honest, I just felt so alone, Brooke. I felt like it's like I know a lot of people deal with this. Why do I not have any friends that have this? Why do I feel so alone? But it's very difficult to get people to talk about this because it has been extremely painful. It's destroyed lives, destroyed relationships, killed people, absolutely. And then the government essentially said it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So not only do people with Lyme disease have to fight the disease, but we've also got to fight the government.
Yeah, propaganda all over around it. And going back to, was it designed originally as a bioweapon? Is that why they're not taking it seriously? Is that why we're dismissed? Because they don't want us to lift the lid, on something bigger. There's a lot more to it than what we're all told.
I don't have a lot of research on the whole bioweapon thing, but one of the arguments that I see online, and I think it's just so silly, is uh, they've uncovered skeletons that are 5, 10,000 years old with evidence of Lyme disease.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when somebody says, like for example, the government used ticks to as a bioweapon. Like the tick is the soldier, the tick is the vehicle, and the Bergendorf fairy spirocyte bacteria is the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So the ticks they're super small, like they can be as big as the tip of your pen or your pencil, and like you wouldn't even notice it. Like it could be as small as a freckle, and uh, it's just an extremely clever vehicle to attack a population, because
Mm-hmm.
if the tick is infected and you can infect people, uh, you can't hardly do anything without being exposed to ticks, whether it's standing in your backyard or, I mean, if you do anything outside, you have exposure to ticks. But the argument that the spirocyte bacterium is ancient, it's not a bioweapon because we've uncovered Lyme disease in skeletons that are 5,000 years old or 10,000 years old. So this disease is ancient, and you know it's not a
Because they
bioweapon.
never could have done anything new with it.
That's my point exactly. Is maybe the organism is ancient, but the vehicle that is the tick, like it, nobody knows if this was even a tick-borne illness. Like it is now, but we don't know 10,000 years ago how this person contracted Lyme disease. And the idea that it's now becoming a very prevalent issue, it raises the debate. It's like, you might have found a skeleton with, arthritic bones or whatnot, signs of Lyme disease, but we have lots of people every day getting Lyme disease. Like I'm of the impression millions of people in the United States are infected. So this isn't like a one-off thing that happened, 5,000-10,000 years ago. This is like, we're really dealing with a serious issue here.
Yeah, and why was it clustered around Lyme, Massachusetts? And with my location, I'm like an hour southeast of Fort McCoy in Wisconsin. I think it's Fort McCoy. Um, but like, how come they cluster around military bases? Like, that always was interesting to me.
it, there's enough evidence that, and I haven't done any research, but I would really like, I, I, this is the administration. If there is somebody in office that can help with this, it's Trump, it's RFK Jr., it's Elon searching for truth, searching for more transparency in the government. If there was ever an administration that wants there to be more transparency and more truth, it's the one we have right now. And I'm a big Trump fan. I don't know where you lean politically, but uh, if I had tried to start the podcast several years ago, like,
It wouldn't have.
there's no chance. It's just the discussion that the government did something they shouldn't have, and the pharmaceuticals are profiting off of something they shouldn't be. That it's all rigmarole. It's all hard to treat, hard to I mean, it's all nonsense. If I tried speaking about that years ago, not a chance.
Mm-mm.
And that's one of the reasons why it was so difficult to get people to come on the podcast, and difficult for me to meet people with Lyme disease, is because people that suffer don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, because we've been scorned for it. Like we've tried to talk about it, and for some reason the government doesn't want us to talk about it. It's a non-issue.
Yeah. Another question. Have mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, mood changes been a part of your experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of them. And I don't know how much of those, what was first, the chicken or the egg? Did having a disease that everybody said was in my head, is that what caused me to have anxiety? Is that what caused me to be withdrawn? Or is it the symptoms, that the medical symptoms that actually came along with it? But yeah, it touches everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
That's a great analogy, the chicken or the egg. Like, so for example, I've got a story. I went to the hospital uh, near the university I was going to school at, and there were essentially medical students at the school were, I don't know if they were like in their residency or whatnot at the hospital, but I went in there to get help, thinking I have Lyme disease. I've gotten multiple negative tests. I need help now. I'm very sick. And they basically did a three-ring circus. So three physicians, one would come in, they'd speak with me, they'd write some notes, they'd go out. Another physician would come in, they'd speak with me, I'd tell the same thing, they'd write some notes, they go out. A third physician or student, excuse me, student physician, whatever, would come in, take notes, then they go out. And I would say things like, I'm depressed. I, have had thoughts of suicide. I'm really in bad shape. I need help now. And they went outside, and then it was like, nobody's coming back in. What's the deal? So they had come to the conclusion that I was a threat to myself, and they needed to Baker Act me. They needed to hold me against my will because I was
Wow.
suicidal, because I was depressed. And I
You're gonna be depressed if everybody you're close to is telling you you're crazy. You're going to get angry easily and more often when everybody is, telling you that they don't believe you. I mean, of course, the emotional and the mental aspects that you were just speaking about, it's like, yeah, why am I so angry? Like, did it cause me to be angry, or do I just know how you're going to treat me when I start talking to you?
chicken or the egg, I mean, it's like, yeah, Lyme disease might cause depression or anxiety, or it definitely has caused a stress disorder for me. I get a lot of stress, but anybody that is sick from an illness and cannot get treatment because medical doctors do not believe in the illness, anybody would be depressed. It's like I know what the problem is, but these doctors are specifically trained the opposite. It like like that's a very depressing scenario. And when you think about it, you're like, man, I'm so sick. Like, I need antibiotics. I need a diagnosis. I need help now. I'm in the hospital seeing doctors right now to get help. And they came to the conclusion that I was a threat to my own life, that I was, suicidal, depressed. And it's like, I'm here asking for help. If I was a threat to myself, I wouldn't be sitting here in a doctor's office asking for help. The issue, I'm depressed because no one is helping me.
No one's
That's why I'm
listening.
depressed.
You're not hearing me.
Because I'm taking off of work to come here. I have no money. I have no resources. I have no time. And I've got to go to a dozen doctor appointments just to find a Lyme literate doctor that believes I'm not crazy. Like that in itself is a very depressing situation. Anybody would be depressed. And in fact, if I wasn't depressed, that would be very, very odd. Like there would be something wrong with me. Uh, anyway, how are we doing on time? So we've been recording for probably about an hour, 10 minutes now. I'm good to chat for a little bit longer and then we can wrap up. Or if you want to wrap up now, or
I have a little bit more time. That's okay.
okay. So we'll keep going here. What was one? Now that this one might be tricky. What was one of the hardest moments or lowest points during your journey, and how did you get through it?
Oh gosh. Well, a couple years after 2010, my husband and I attempted to conceive, and we didn't have any problem with conceiving. However, I suffered 5 miscarriages in a row. And with my personal research, they were like, "Oh, well, it flares up, autoimmune things. It causes your body to reject the fetus. This is normal." And then I think it was the fourth one. I had asked a different gynecologist, a specialty doctor that I was seeing, can we test the fetus, for Lyme's? Because this is just insane. I'm a healthy young woman, otherwise from the Lyme. Why am I having loss after loss after loss after loss? And it was no testing was ever done. And it was like I was asking for the moon. It was just, okay, all this research says that, autoimmune response, yes, you can reject fetuses. And then my physicians are sitting here telling me, oh, we don't know why. Like we've got no clue, but we're not going to run any additional testing to see if this really is what's causing your losses. And for that, then it didn't just affect me. It affected me. It affected my husband. It affected the future children that I was attempting to bring into the world. And it was just stonewalled. Just, well, we don't know if this is related. We don't, that's a different study, that it's unlikely that that's that. Like, okay, well, why can't we look into it? And what else could it be? Like, let's test this. But we never did get additional testing done. We actually just took a break for a while. And then when we started back up again, we were able to have two boys after that.
Okay. That sounds extremely traumatic.
It was crazy.
How old are your boys?
10 and 7.
How are they doing?
They're doing good. Um, they're doing good. I could do better as a mom sometimes just because I'm like, worn out or, just absolutely exhausted. And then, I don't think they even know that I ever had Lyme. No, actually, no. I've never made it a big deal to them. It's just, oh, mom's got another bullseye. Mom's going to the doctor. We're doing this. They don't know, all of everything that went with it. But
Are they healthy?
the oldest one is my youngest. I've asked for an autism diagnosis and they will not give it to me, even though, I mean, he's clearly got some issues on the spectrum or he's got some challenges. But no answers. He's also the only one that got the hepatitis vaccine right after he was born too. And tetanus, he ended up needing a tetanus vaccine. But otherwise, he's the only one that received vaccines as well.
So the 10-year-old didn't.
No, and he's like a blue ribbon baby.
So that's well, I mean, that's wonderful that you were able to have kids and that they're, healthy, hopefully not infected with Lyme. I don't know if you've looked into congenital Lyme disease, but I've heard it several times. I haven't had anybody on the podcast yet, but I've heard it multiple times where parents had Lyme, kids also developed Lyme. And
No, they've never been tested, and that's not because of my preference. I've asked flat out for them to be tested, but going by protocol and insurance things, you don't just randomly test every child that you bring in that lives in the woods because mom got bit by a tick a couple years ago. They need to have symptoms or they need to have the bullseye rash. So that is a very good question. And are they okay from the Lyme's perspective? I honestly don't know. I hope so. I mean, but it's very real chance, very real possibility that they could be affected by it.
It's also interesting that you say, uh,
And some people say it's sexually transmitted as well.
yeah, yep, that's something I'm worried about because I want kids and I want a happy and healthy family, and it just seems
How
like
intimate can you be when you're wondering if you're actually possibly infecting, your partner or your spouse with something as inflammatory as Lyme's disease?
it's very difficult. It's hard on the relationship for sure, and I'm of the impression because I still think I have an infection that I need to go on several more antibiotic treatments before I try to, have a kid, or have unprotected sex. So it's a tricky situation where I feel like I can't wait for somebody to give me that advice or for the medical industry to say, uh, you know, Lyme can be congenital or Lyme can be, an STD. I can't wait for them to say that because, odds are they'll never say it in my lifetime
Yeah, I'd still
unless,
be waiting for those answers if I was, yeah.
so it's like I sort of have to live in fear or just live, with knowing like I'm choosing to do this for my reasons, and I don't care what the medical industry says. Like this is how I'm going to live my life and how I'm going to try to build a family. That's crazy. You said 4 or 5 miscarriages.
Five. Yeah, five. And every time it, advanced further into the pregnancy. So it was kind of messed with us along the way. And then
I,
still what caused it?
I'm sure that was very difficult on your relationship um, and on yourself. Okay, let me see if we've got any others here. I like that you said your confidence in self has increased, due to this. And there's one question here that says, uh, "Is there anything positive or unexpected that has come out of your Lyme journey, like new passions, connections, or personal growth?"
I would say that it shaped who I am now. I'm definitely into alternative medicine, just food as medicine. And then also meditation for me. I heard that it could help with brain fog, and boy, does it ever. Like I have to meditate bare minimum of every 3 days, and if I don't, it's like my brain like just can't process. But if I take time, at least once every 3 days, bare minimum, to meditate and just clear everything, then my brain fog is much better. And I wouldn't have started that if it wasn't for the Lymes and for all the symptoms that I had to, try to get rid of. And then just also just, yeah, my confidence in me, having to advocate for myself, having to go to bat for myself when literally nobody else was. I mean, my mom was in my corner, because I just told her, it's you don't need that external validation after you've been through something significant where you were right and you knew it all along, and you just don't need that outside, validation anymore. So you're like, I know, I already know.
I feel the same way, and it's unfortunate because I wonder how many people commit suicide or just die from the illness or co-infections, or I wonder how many people were really struggling with Lyme disease that died because of COVID or died because they had a pre-existing condition and then COVID came in and just took them out
Yep.
before they had the opportunity to gain the confidence and realize that they were right, realize like I've been right the whole time. And Anthony William in that book, The Medical Medium, Celery Juice, he talks about how there are so many people with chronic conditions, and he mentions Lyme disease that are told they're crazy by the medical industry, and these people need to be validated. Like he validates you. He says like your illness is real, even if the medical industry said it wasn't, and celery juice will help. And he goes through the list of illnesses, and it's helped me tremendously. So I'm excited for you to try that.
Oh, I'm excited to try that too. I really am. When I've heard of, the Native Americans using that, as a medicinal plant, I just assumed that they were eating it, I mean, well, obviously I don't think they juiced, but I mean, way to go for them for figuring that stuff out. And I don't know, it's just one more reason how traditional medicine and alternative therapies, they have something to them. They really do.
Western medicine has uh, it's really taken a dive, and I'm kind of bringing it back to it's like the whole system with the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies and the treatments that are allowed and paid for. Uh, once politics have entered into the medical realm, like once politics influence which treatments are allowed, which treatments are paid for, which illnesses have accurate diagnostic testing. Like with COVID, for example, the way that they said the vaccine is the only solution. Ivermectin
Don't like
is ivermectin is horse paste. You can't take ivermectin. Uh, and other treatments. When politics get involved in treatment and medical protocol, we've left the realm of what's best for the patient.
that. And why are they involved? Why is it a political, like, how come? What's going on behind the scenes that is making you guys deny this? A
It
lot of
it
questions.
it all comes back to where is the money going? It's all about money. And I think Western medicine has they shouldn't even call it Western medicine. It should just be called capitalist medicine. It should be called, what's the most expensive medicine? Western medicine. Because it's not the most effective. It's not the best treatment. It's what makes the most money. And I had I was with a guy that just got over cancer, and he said in 1 year his chemotherapy they billed over $1.7 million. It
Wow.
it's like and nobody gets denied for chemotherapy. I mean, it is like the big money making machine. If you have cancer, like let's get you treated right away. The insurance companies pay for everything. It's like nobody has an issue getting help for cancer if the treatment is this specific chemotherapy. But when
Which
it
makes
comes,
me wonder why. Why are you pushing that one? Why is that one government approved and given everybody?
It, and then you have somebody like William Mackis or McKees on X, who is a Canadian guy doing the fenbendazole and ivermectin, like alternative treatments for cancer, and he's having massive success with these cheap treatments.
Cheap.
They're
Yeah,
cheap. It
exactly.
and it just makes you think, well, I, we're on the precipice of either disaster or, I mean, probably disaster, be honest, because
Yeah.
that's what happens when the truth comes out. It becomes a big issue. But as soon as people start understanding how much politics influences medical protocol in the United States, they will understand that sometimes it's better not to listen to your doctor
Yeah.
because they're essentially consuming brainwash material that's been influenced by pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, they might completely think they're acting in your best interest, but what they've been taught and the guidelines that they have to go by, they're not necessarily giving you the care that you need, and not because they don't want to, because they're not Lyme literate.
They're taught the opposite.
Mhm.
The way I look at my sisters, who are both doctors, and one of them's a surgeon, is like you're smart enough to be a good test taker, but you're not smart enough to question if the answer on the test is correct.
Right.
It's like you can memorize the answer, but you don't think, is the answer actually correct? So a lot of medical professionals are like really smart, dumb people. And I never understood it. Like my dad would, he would smoke cigarettes in the hospital. It's like, what kind of physician does that?
An older one.
An older one, but even an older one, it's like, it's you're just a smart, dumb person, in my opinion. Like, you were smart enough to pass the test, but you're not smart enough to question how, if the information is correct.
And even the ones that do, because a lot of them are curious. A lot of them like have caught on to things over time, but they're afraid. They're afraid to get fined. They're afraid to lose their medical license. They're afraid to have a lawsuit because, standing alone or standing against, the mainstream, narrative, that it's not going to be good for their career. And they've done a lot to get that career. So it's hard to find someone who will actively work against the established system, even when it's so obviously incorrect.
They get strapped down with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and then they've got to work as much as possible in their medical practice. And if they go against the medical criteria, if they realize the information's incorrect, they're now put in a situation that, you know, do I stand up against the government? Do I stand up against the, big pharma, big industry? Well, I'll probably lose my license. I'll lose my livelihood. I'll lose my house. I'll lose my car. My kids won't be able to eat. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
they are put in a horrible position themselves. I don't envy their position. Like, there needs to be a change because it's not working the way that it is.
but we are getting somewhere. I think this is the start, because there are people coming out and saying, hey, this is incorrect. Hey, this is fraud. Hey, I noticed this treatment works really well, and it's not like nobody's talking about it.
Right, like
Uh,
the hypericillin that I just found out in that study last week. I've never heard anybody talk about that before.
It 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 just seems like right now we're in the phase like, okay, we can talk about this now, and I think a lot of it was COVID. COVID was the big like opened the can. It
Yeah.
was like uh, and that when people don't understand how bad the medical industry is, you look at something like COVID, and if that doesn't raise massive red flags for you, massive concern, like I don't know if you're just like you're looking at it with a blind eye, or you're turning your back to it, or like it just doesn't make sense because essentially the big players in the medical industry were powerful enough to, in my opinion, influence an election, influence medical protocol, influence, kill millions of people, and essentially get away with it, like
Yep.
hold zero liability. Uh, so if that's not alarming to you, then maybe you're just completely oblivious, or maybe you're like, okay, that's a big deal, but what are we going to do about it? It just, I mean, COVID really opened up the can, and if you were at all unpleased with the medical industry or thought it was corrupt, COVID was like, okay, let's talk about it now.
Yeah, that was should have been very eye-opening for the entire world. And I firmly believe that anybody that is still oblivious, to the reality of what's going on in the medical industry, I think they're oblivious because they want to be, because it's easier, to just not make waves and to just be like, okay, take the vaccine, go along with it. It's just easier. When you start questioning things, when you start going against, what you're supposed to say or how you're supposed to react, then you need to be able to back that up. And a lot of people are cowards and they don't want to back it up because then they have to vouch for themselves. They have to, support their own ideas and thoughts with reasoning and proof. And not everybody has the time or the interest to even put that energy into it. So they just go along with it.
it it's an uphill battle to do what's right.
Yeah. And no good deed ever goes unpunished.
Man,
That's true.
it's tough. So if we could wrap up here, I this is a pretty good question that I like to end on, or we can see what else you have to add. Uh, if you could go back to your pre-Lyme self, or someone that's newly diagnosed, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Document and believe yourself. But when you're advocating for self and when you're trying to explain, to your doctor everything that's going on, you're going to be a little bit, frazzled in that moment. And your journals, your diaries, your personal notes are going to be, what make it or break it when you're in there and you're talking, about that. Um, I know I find for me anyway, if I'm just trying to just talk off the cuff, it doesn't necessarily always work. And you only have one moment when you're in with your physician, and they're very crunched for time. It's like you can't just say, "Oh, well, my left arm went numb." Be like, "Okay, well, on this date, this date, this date, this happened. This was the symptoms." And you come and you're looking very prepared. So notes, 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 and just advocate for yourself. Believe yourself. You know if something's wrong, you have to be your own advocate. I've said that so many times, but you're your own fighter. Because if you don't, nobody else is going to fight for you. Nobody else will. It has to be you.
You, you think that you should be accompanied to doctor's appointments, or should you go alone?
I suppose that would be different for every person. Some people might be more afraid to speak up in front of somebody that they bring with. Um, I guess, yeah, that would be it would be helpful if the person supported you and believed you. But if you're bringing in your spouse and they're just saying, oh, yeah, they have a lot of headaches, yeah, they lay on the couch a lot in the mornings, they say it's hard to get going. I mean, that's going to be really different than someone that's like, this is not the same person as 5 years ago. Something is going on. She knows it or he knows it. We need to do something about it. So it depends on who the advocate is going to be also, because they could kind of ruin it for you.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. I, I in my experience, I'd say always have somebody with you when you go to a doctor's appointment, but obviously they need to be somebody in your corner, not,
Yes,
they,
exactly.
they need to be on the same page with you.
Not just
Um,
somebody that had the time to go that they're not busy, so I'm going to take my coworker. No, you need someone that has your back as much as you have your own back.
do you have anything else you want to add for your podcast episode, Brooke?
Oh, I think we got most things. You've been very easy to talk to, and I appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure. I really would like to stay in touch, and one of the reasons I started the podcast, like I said, is because I felt alone. So maybe in a weird way, this is like how I'm meeting people that have experienced what I've experienced. So
Oh,
I
I like that, and I'm grateful. I'd love to stay in touch. I feel a little less alone today. I truly do. So thank you for that.
that makes me feel really good. Okay, well, you have a great day. I will let you know when the episode is on YouTube.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
You
Bye.
too.